New season, same old Chelsea Football Club. Yes, the ridiculous decisions and actions of the Chelsea management continue at full speed, and fans of various teams are starting to ask questions. When is it going to stop once and for all? How many players do Chelsea need to get to the level they want to be? When will financial fair play finally kick in? As a Chelsea fan myself, this one's going to hurt, but here we go. It's starting to get completely out of hand. And speaking of the root of the problem, the last insane thing Todd Boehly and co did was to bring João Felix for €50 million just 14 months after he was brought back from a loan spell at Stamford Bridge with Atletico Madrid that clearly didn't work out. So, why would you repeat the same mistake? With the difference being that you are currently paying 5 times as much, given that Chelsea paid $10 million in loan fee in January 2023. It's utterly ridiculous, and rest assured it won't change until Chelsea finally get a positive result other than 6th place in the league and the Carabao Cup final. There have been so many wrong moves, decisions and actions that this Chelsea project is unlikely to have the chance to be among the top teams in the Premier League and Champions League again anytime soon. What's more, if we look back through the archives, we might be able to conclude that this is the most outrageous football project in history. Let's get back to the João Felix topic. Again, okay, let's say he's a top player, right? He was incredible at Benfica as a teenager. Atletico Madrid paid almost €130 million for him, which immediately put him at the top 10 most expensive transfers in history. He played a couple of seasons at the Metropolitano, failed to repay his hefty fee, and was sent on a €10 million loan to Stamford Bridge, where he scored just 4 goals in half a season. Then, after Chelsea refused to activate his buyout clause, there wasn't a single top club interested in signing him throughout the summer of 2023. As a result, Felix literally had to spend the final hours of the transfer window to complete another loan deal, this time to Barcelona. His period in Catalonia got off to a good start, with a couple of good games catching the eye of the Barca faithful, but it wasn't long before his poor form set in again, leading to another underwhelming season in his career, culminating in a missed penalty against France at the Euros. The summer of 2024, history repeating itself, nobody wanted him until Uncle Todd came knocking on the door, paying a staggering €50 million for a man who had already failed once at the club. Okay, you can tell me that I have bad ball knowledge, that I know nothing about football, but you have to agree that this transfer sounds completely out of this world. And the strangest thing of all is that literally, like a week earlier, Boehly paid another $60 million for a player in the same position, Pedro Neto from Wolves. So who's going to be in the starting lineup? Or where would either of them play when Chelsea already have a proven starter in Cole Palmer? Or what about Enzo Fernandez, a €120 million player who started at the number 10 position against Man City in the opening game of the season? Where would they play Nkunku, Mudryk, Dewsbury Hall? Yeah, I hope you get my point, but this is really starting to get out of control. Todd Boehly and his advisors have probably somehow found this loophole in the law that allows them to spend as much as they want on whichever players they want. And that brings us to the next topic in the video. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed it so far, please click the subscribe button so you never miss anything from us in the future. So, we're talking about these 7, 8 or 9 year contracts. The first 2 players to sign such a long-term deal were Mykhailo Mudryk and Enzo Fernandez. Mudryk signed until 2031, while Enzo signed for an extra year until 2032. Yes, we already understood the reason why Chelsea wants such long contracts. They simply have no other choice if they want to attract so many players. The interesting question is, why do players agree to commit themselves for almost a decade to a project that clearly doesn't look that promising? Football pundit and former Liverpool player Jamie Carragher said something very true in one of his recent interviews. Players have to stop signing for Chelsea. I don't know how I would have looked at that Chelsea project if I was a player. The only reason you would sign is because, let's say your agent tells you, 7-year deal, that's guaranteed money for 7 years. Do you know what I would say back? Back yourself as a player. Sign a 4-year deal at a proper club, and when you get a renewal, your money goes up anyway. Yes, the situation at Chelsea is getting so out of hand that even pundits who are supposed to refrain from such comments can't resist telling the truth. Now, coming back to Mudryk and Enzo, let's say they didn't know what was going to happen to the club when they signed their contracts. On the other hand, it's absolutely ludicrous that young and talented players such as Caicedo, Lavia, Mark Guew, or even goalkeeper Philip Jorgensen signed contracts for the next 5+ years. This is just the perfect formula for failing to reach your full potential. Let's take Barcelona's young Spanish striker Mark Guew. He had a good season as a substitute for the Spanish team, gaining valuable first-team experience. He came on in a league game against Atletico Bilbao and scored the winning goal just 20 seconds later. He went on to get further opportunities, including a number of starts. The club had high hopes for the La Masia graduate's future at the club, including tipping him as a replacement for 36-year-old Robert Lewandowski. However, as soon as Todd's money started rolling in, the talent turned his back on the big dream and is now likely to be fighting for a place as a backup, with Nkunku and Nico Jackson seemingly ahead of him in the pecking order. We could go on and on about what's going on at Chelsea, but the fans seem to be starting to forget just how respectable and solid a club the Blues were during the Roman Abramovich era. So let's answer a question. How did Chelsea get here? For that though, let's turn the clock back to May 2022. When Roman Abramovich sold Chelsea 25 months ago, the fans were divided over the future. On the one hand, some of them knew that more money would come to the club, but the majority feared that no one could run the club the way Roman had for the past 19 years. And it turned out that they were right. Todd Boehly's 2-year reign at Stamford Bridge was arguably the worst we've seen at a top club ever. Expectations were low at the start, with no one believing an American who called the sport soccer could manage a club as big as Chelsea. So, he was eager to overcome those verbal attacks by promising his dream starting lineup to the then manager Thomas Tuchel. What happened? Well, he sent out a squad of 12 players lined up in a 4-4-3 formation. Absolutely clueless. Then, the whole relationship between Boehly and Tuchel fell apart, as there were even rumours of the businessman buying players Tuchel didn't even need, including Sterling, Koulibaly and Aubameyang. Then, a few weeks later, during a game against West Ham, Tuchel's half-time team talk was interrupted by an unexpected knock on the dressing room door. It was Uncle Todd again, bringing a group of children to meet the team. Understandably, Tuchel refused, which added more fuel to the fire. Exactly 3 days later, Chelsea sacked Tuchel to the surprise of the entire Chelsea community, stating that he had lost the dressing room for mysterious off-field reasons. He was quickly replaced by Brighton manager Graham Potter, a specialist with little to no experience at this level, with the Seagulls being the pinnacle of his managerial career. The result? A lackluster run of results and a mid-table status in the Premier League. This led to around £300 million more being spent on the likes of Mudryk and Enzo Fernandez, as Chelsea outspent each of the other 4 top European leagues. Remember when Boehly gave Tuchel his 12-man ideal lineup? Well, you would think that over the next few months, Uncle Todd would have learned a little more about the game of football, or at least the history of the club he owns. Because the next nonsense he uttered in public was that Chelsea always have a guaranteed place in the Champions League. We're in it every year. He laughed in front of a group of agents before actually finding out that this is not exactly right. The next clueless thing to come out of a Chelsea man's mouth came from Potter himself, who tried to keep his job by resorting to some very forced swearing to impress the Blues faithful. We'll try to win the fucking Champions League. Well, a few weeks later he was also sacked with the joint worst record in Chelsea's Premier League history, with Boehly appointing Frank Lampard as caretaker boss. The legend returned to the manager's chair, but once again failed to impress. 6 defeats in his first 6 games in charge. And here comes the craziest part of the whole journey of horrors for Chelsea fans. After 12 months as owner, Boehly finally made one right decision in appointing proven specialist Mauricio Pochettino at the start of the 2023-24 season. His time at Stamford Bridge began in a difficult manner, but with time the team began to find a rhythm and finished the season with 9 wins and 5 draws in the last 15 games, climbing from 11th to 6th in the table in about 3 months. And another mistake by Boehly. He sacked Pochettino, claiming that his training methods are outdated and that he had concerns about his tactics. Yeah, we're thinking the same thing. This is literally the worst boss on the planet. You're doing your job properly, you're finally getting some momentum, which would have certainly continued this season, but you get sacked because someone doesn't trust your methods. And here we are, a couple of months later, when Chelsea's squad is so wide that people on social media started joking that their training ground looks like a gym on January 1st. And this footage wasn't shared by any Chelsea fans or haters, but by the club's official TikTok page, which means they're obviously proud of the depth in their squad. Unfortunately for them, Todd Boehly can have all the money in the world, but he could hardly change the rules of the game and play with 11 outfield players. Oh, and speaking of money, do you want to hear the craziest part of all? Well, Todd Boehly took over Chelsea about 25 5 months ago, but the Blues under him are already in 10th place in terms of money spent on transfer fees in the entire 32-year history of the Premier League. Can you believe it? 1.32 billion euros for 2 years. Absolutely ridiculous. Yes, this was our mocking, sort of exposing type of video on Chelsea FC, analysing the constant bad moves they make in the transfer market. Of course, you can also give your opinion. Do you think the Blues have a chance of doing something impressive this season? Or it would be the 3rd year in a row of failure under the American businessman? Also, don't forget to support us by hitting the like or subscribe button, or just trust us and click on some of the videos you're seeing on the screen right now. It was a pleasure to meet you, so catch you in the next one.